Here are 13 iPhone 13 Pro games with 120 FPS support. Please note, all these games have been confirmed as hitting up to 120 FPS using the application PerfDog. This is a full mobile platform performance test and analysis tool. This was my favorite game to experience 120 FPS on iPad Pro, and it's the same story on iPhone 13 Pro. Before you start playing, you must enable 120 FPS from the options menu on the home screen. If you've never seen this game before, you might be thinking, what the heck am I looking at? Is that a beetle in the middle of the screen? Yes. Yes it is. This is a rhythm violence game where you play as a space beetle and will travel at blistering speed, timing your movements to the beats. The fast movement and special neon and metal effects going on look great at this high frame rate and really give you a tactical edge when it comes to timing your movement to the music. If you're interested, the game costs $4.99 USD, or you can get it under an Apple Arcade subscription. Shooters are one of the best ways to experience a high frame rate on any platform. What's even better, on mobile, you can try it out with COD Mobile. 120 FPS is labelled as Ultra here in the settings menu, and it's only available for multiplayer right now. If you choose Ultra frame rate, you will be forced to play at medium graphics too. Now, let me be honest with you, it's not a locked 120 FPS. Many will say it is. It's not. Even if you put it to low graphics quality, it still won't be locked at that frame rate. It will drop to the low 100s at times, and on occasion it will switch down to 60 FPS for a few seconds. A shame, yes. A locked 120 FPS in the future would be amazing. Maybe it will be possible on the iPhone 14 Pro, because it is already possible on the last two iPad Pros, a locked frame rate of 120. On the 12th of October 2021, free action RPG Genshin Impact was updated to version 2.2.0, which added a new function, a 120 FPS option under the graphics menu. Now look, the game can't even reach 60 FPS consistently at medium settings for long play sessions, so I don't know why 120 FPS was even added here. It's a much better experience on the last two iPad Pros, as they don't suffer from thermal throttling as much. Anyway, even at the lowest settings possible on your iPhone 13 Pro, you'll unfortunately never get a locked 120 FPS. It will drop quite often, especially during battles, and sometimes when it's very challenging, it will drop to 60 FPS for even sometimes a few minutes. The iPhone probably isn't ready for this type of gaming performance, and Genshin Impact is, in my opinion, a very poorly optimized game in general. On the 25th of December 2021, Supercell secretly added 120 FPS support to Brawl Stars on iPhone 13 Pro, which is why it's here. This was under version 41.148. Now, I don't believe you have to enable this high frame rate, as it's on by default. I tested it, just like it was on iPad Pro a few years back. Brawl Stars is a free-to-play 3v3 multiplayer and battle royale type game. To be honest, for the average player, Brawl Stars doesn't really require a super high frame rate to play competitively. I guess it's nice to have, but it's not impactful. You'll notice slightly smoother animations, so you can more easily predict enemy brawler movements and projectiles, for instance. Pascal's Wager was one of the first publicly announced games to get a 120Hz mode on iPhone 13 Pro on the 28th of September 2021. You'll find it under the settings menu. Make sure you put the graphics quality to medium, which will allow the game to reach 120 FPS more often. When this high FPS mode was first added to the game, it would often jump between 120 and 60 FPS frequently as a way of optimizing the game. but based on my testing, it now sticks to 120 FPS almost always at medium settings. I say almost as there is still one annoying bug. During cutscenes, the game will drop to 30 FPS or 60 FPS and will remain at this frame rate when you return back to actual gameplay. To fix this, it's easy but an absolute nuisance. Just open the pause menu or inventory and then go back to gameplay and it will return to 120 FPS. Pascal's wager costs $6.99 USD. Bugdom 2 is a very old action-adventure game, originally released back in 2002. I remember playing it on a massive eMac, which stood for Educational Mac, at my home and primary school a long time ago. It feels so weird now playing it on a really small phone and at a practically pixel-perfect resolution. Even better, Pangea Software added support for 120 FPS on the 14th of November, hence why it's here. It's enabled by default, you don't have to do anything. Back in the day, I didn't even get to experience near 25 FPS. You play as Skip McFly, a grasshopper, and will explore areas inside and around a house and encounter both friends and enemies. Sure, the game was made for kids, but adults can have fun with it too. Bugdom 2 costs $2.99 USD. Furthermore, Pangea Software have updated Nanosaur 2 to support 120 FPS on iPhone 13 Pro. It's enabled by default also. This is another action-adventure game where you play as a flying dinosaur from the future who is equipped with cool firepower. The goal is to find missing dinosaur eggs and battle other dinosaurs and defense systems. You can even play in multiplayer modes with up to 4 players in Battle, Capture the Flag and Race. Nanosaur 2 is from 2004, but visually it still holds up kind of well, plus flying around at 120 FPS is a real treat. I will say, play this one with a controller. Using the gyro controls results in random on-screen judders, and it's terrible. Nanosaur 2 costs $3.99 USD. It took a few months, but Riot's mobile version of League of Legends, Wild Rift, now supports 120 FPS. If you enable 120 FPS to maintain a more consistent frame rate, some of the graphical qualities have been disabled. I love how Wild Rift comes with a handy in-game FPS counter. It's one of the few games on the App Store to include this. This means you can see if the frame rate is sticking to 120. If you're playing with a low battery percentage or your device is getting hot, you may see some small dips in the frame rate. If this happens, just go and lower some of the quality options or just stop playing for a while. This is what I'm talking about, a premium paid match 3 game with RPG roguelike elements. Trace a path and match weapons with monsters to defeat them, match treasure to earn gold and buy items, and match shields to level up your character. I think 120 FPS support on iPhone 13 Pro was added for the game's 2.0 update back in February. This also brought new bosses, skills, music, remastered UI, and weirdly, controller support. 120 FPS over the prior 60 isn't that noticeable here, as the gameplay is quite static, but I welcome it nonetheless. Dungeon Falan costs $4.99 USD. From the creators of Genshin Impact, this is their prior action game. I have seen hardly anyone show on YouTube or the World Wide Web that this game supports 120 FPS here. It's not that similar to Genshin Impact, as it's a more linear game where you go into missions destroying different types of foes, but it still looks pretty damn good. It's not as demanding either, but I'm really sorry, but you're gonna have to put all the settings to their lowest to get 110 to 120 FPS. It sucks, I know, but it's another example of how this device just isn't ready for high-end 120 FPS gameplay. This is currently the only racing game with 120 FPS support on this device. It's an arcade experience mixing highway racing and crazy crashes. The game has many special effects, for the trail or whatever you call it that goes behind your vehicle, to the massive crashes. Speed Demons is available to Apple Arcade subscribers. Aruna's Adventure is a retro action adventure game. I believe this was the first game on the App Store to support ProMotion on iPhone 13 Pro, a day after the iPhone released, the 25th of September. It's really cool to see this support from an independent developer on iOS. Players will travel through an 8-bit pixel art world of over 400 screens. Find secrets, fight monsters, go into dungeons, and take on challenging bosses. Fun fact, this is the first game we've seen that uses Apple's virtual controller. Aruna's Adventure costs $4.99 USD. Our last game is free-to-play space shooter Phoenix 2. If you're interested, on the 28th of September it was updated to version 5.5, which, as you would expect by now, added 120 FPS support on you-know-what. You can switch between the FPS modes on the home screen. If you want to know some more technical things about the game, it supports the Metal API, which every game does, and it uses the dev's Flare engine, which was developed in-house. This allows the game to render the action with advanced graphical effects, such as bloom and anamorphic lens flare. Here are some bonus games with 120 FPS support. Air Wings is another game by Pangea Software. It's a free multiplayer flying battle game. It's actually really cool. I strongly suggest checking it out if you like these type of games and are a fan of Pangea. Doodle Jump free version and Doodle Jump 2 now support 120 FPS on iPhone 13 Pro. It's great to see classic iOS games still being updated for modern hardware features. I love to see it. So, Clash of Clans has 120 FPS support if you enable it from the settings menu. That's all I'm going to say for this game, as I'm not really a big fan of it. Pokémon GO also now has 120 FPS support, however it doesn't really run at this all the time, it's often running at 60 FPS. But that's still a big improvement over the previous, I think, 30 FPS. So, what do you think of this list? What games would you like to see get 120 FPS support in the future? There are some high quality games on offer here in my opinion so far, but I'm sorry it took so long to make this video. It took a while to see a few games get this support before I could actually start working on this video project. Anyway, it's here and I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like because that would be very helpful, and subscribe and turn on notifications to stay up to date with everything Apple gaming related. Yeah, okay, my name's Stewie and thanks for watching.